Good morning! Today, I am tasked to report about the importance of TPR inside the classroom setting. But before that, let me give you an overview of what is TPR really means. So TPR stands for Total Physical Response. This term was created by an American psychology professor named Dr. James J. Asher from the University of San Jose, in which he said that TPR is used as a teaching methodology and was developed from observational studies of how children learn their first language and is built upon various related works, including trace theory and developmental psychology. Moreover, total physical response, or TPR, is a dialect or language instructing strategy built around the coordination of the discourse and activity in which it endeavors to instruct dialect through physical and motor movement. So the goal of TPR is making the students understand what the word or the phrase or the expression is all about. So basically, TPR is a language teaching method in which it is based in the coordination of language and in its coordination of physical and language movements. So teachers who use this kind of method inside the classroom gives instruction with the incorporation of body movements wherein students responds repeating that language and action together. So like for example, when the teacher would say to jump with at the same time doing the action, so the learners would do the same action and how the teacher incorporate the action together with the language. And second is if the teacher would imitating flying together with the action, so the students or the learners would also do the same. So let's proceed. One good thing about the TPR is that it favors the strategies, assets, and forms of language procurement over language learning. So the focal point of the TPR is that teachers have the freedom to choose for strategies, resources, forms of language in order to impart knowledge to the learners with with the with the incorporation of the body movements or the movements. So another is that TPR also provides language acquisition experiences for your students in a classroom setting. So TPR concerns itself with the meaning, so your students will have a communicative use of language instead of just knowing the rules of grammar. So another focal point of the TPR is that it concerns more on the meaning, in which they have the learners have the freedom to communicate without knowing the rules of the grammar. They have this in in the in the communication process, or in a conversation. They impart knowledge through the use of their language, because through the use of their language with, without being overwhelmed, being stressed. So other reasons why TPR is an effective teaching method. First is that we have to look back to how learners learn their first language, because even before learners start to saying word, they have been watching, listening, and imitating while growing. So putting actions into words, we're helping the we're helping the learners and understand the meaning. They will be able to learn to speak. So on the other hand, the TPR, or the total physical response, hits the three learning styles, which is These are the visual, the auditory, and the kinesthetic. We all know that we have these different types of learners in which they have these ways of learning. Others would prefer to or learn fast if they see or if there are representation showed to them. Others would also learn fast if they uh, learn from through listening. And there are also students who learn fast if they ex- ex- if they put actions into it. So first learning style, we have the visual learners. So visual learners benefit from TPR because it makes it easy to associate words and sentence structures with appropriate movements. So that's what I have said. As what I said a while ago, that visual learners are more preferred on seeing representations like pictures or anything that would make the topic more clear or easy for them to understand the topic. And second type of learning style, we have the audio learners, in which it is an essential for students who learn a language by listening it repeatedly. Learners develop their ability for language by recognizing patterns and sounds and being able to emulate and imitate. So these are the type of learners who prefer or learn fast through listening because through listening there are patterns or there are sounds being made to it, uh, and by that uh, there's there it is most focused on the patterns that makes them to learn fast. And lastly, we have the kinesthetic. These are the children learn by doing more often than not so effective. TPR can not only help develop a child's foreign language ability, it simply makes class more fun and engaging. Remember, when your students is having fun, you're having fun or also. So kinesthetic, these are learners who are more preferred or doing or learners uh, learn if they do the action or learn through their bodies and through the use of their senses. So basically, uh, the TPR is really a vital teaching method inside the classroom, and it makes the the teaching learning process more easier because once you incorporate action body movements towards your words or your language, the learners would be able to understand you more because they would be able to see you how you portray or demonstrate the language or the knowledge that you want to impart to your learners. So that's all. Thank you.
Total physical response is most effective when you are teaching children in their early years, especially teaching a second language. This approach focuses on emotional, physical, cognitive, and learning development. Also, this approach utilizes song, games, and stories as a method of teaching the children. Richards and Rogers 2001 stated that TPR is built around the coordination of speech and action. Thus, this approach is very effective when it comes to cognitive learning. Scott and Etterberg stated that the learner's understanding comes through hands, eyes, and how the child eats. The advantage of using TPR with cognitive learning is the learners will be able to use their brain and learning because they have to move and analyze at the same time. The students will be focused and learning. For example, a learner will be taught to sing and dance. The learner will associate their action to the song and vice versa. Another point is the learner will become more interested in learning because it is taught in an interesting manner.
Let's proceed the topic of my report, which is the disadvantages of uh, total total physical response, or TPR. So there are 6 disadvantages of TPR. So number one is the students are not generally given the opportunity to express their own thoughts in a creative way. Then second, it can be a challenge for shy students. Then number three, it is not a very creative method. Then number five is overusing TPR causes someone easily bored. Then number six, the certain target languages may not be suited in this method. So in other words, um, um, this TPR, in other words, this disadvantages of TPR is one of the teaching methods that emphasize the active learning through actions. It means that learners speaking skills through listening to their teacher and before requiring them to speak and asking them to to practice using verbal communication accompanied by physical actions. These three there are three basic steps that use in this method, and these are listen, watch, and limited repeatedly.
How to apply total physical response, or TPR. First, be prepared. Select the vocabulary word that you are going to teach, for example, the word fly. Gather any equipment, props, or pictures you will need to illustrate the meaning of the word. For example, you can create wings as your props, show movements of flying to the students, and you can also prepare a picture of a bird while flying to represent your chosen word. Second, teacher modeling. Say the vocabulary word for the student. Use gesture, facial expression, props, or body movements to illustrate the meaning of the word. Fourth, student participation. Let the students to mimic the same gesture, facial expression, and body movement modeled by the teacher. Ask them to say the word as they doing also the movement. For example, for the student participation, let the student to say the word fly by doing also the movement of flying. In this way, they could visualize and understand the chosen word in a written form, not just doing the oral or actions. And lastly, repetition and practice. As you teach the next word, do the same process like what you do in teaching the first word. And always remember that don't forget to review and practice the old words with the students, because repeating the words multiple times could help them to familiarize and do not forget it easily.
How to apply TPR in the classroom. So there are two types of examples that I will discuss to you. The first one is the instructional. The second one is the educational. So the first one is the instructional. So the instructional, for example, is the teacher is the one who said or say the command. Um, the and also the student is the one who repeat the command of the teacher. So for example, is the teacher will say the word that touch your head. So the student will repeat the action and also the word that the teacher said, touch your head, touch your head. So the second example is the teacher will say, encircle the dog, encircle the dog, encircle the dog. So the encircle the dog, encircle the dog. So the student also repeat what the teacher said about encircle the dog. So the second word is basketball. Just say basketball. But using the TPR method, when you're saying basketball, basketball.
basketball. The third one is badminton. If you are just saying badminton, so when using TPR in saying the word badminton.
Total physical response is a method of teaching language or vocabulary concepts by using physical movement to react into virtual input. The process mimics the way that infants learn their first language, and it is reduced student inhibition and lower stress. This helps not just into cognitive development of a child as they learn in the language and communication, but also helps in their physical, social, and even behavioral development. So there are advantages in using TPR for learner strategy in the learning environment, not just into cognitive aspect, but also it can be into children's physical and social and even behavioral development. First, advantage is it is fun, easy, and isn't stressful. It leads to behavior development of a child because we all know that it's a stressful environment leads to an inappropriate behavior. So both children and adults proves to be extremely effective mainly because it is put it doesn't put excessive stress both in learners and teacher. Second advantage is that it is good for kinesthetic learners who needs to be active in class. We all know that um, kinesthetic or tactile learners needs to move or even had physical interaction for them to learn and to acquire learners. So this leads to physical development of a child. It creates positive thinking which facilitates that student involves in learning process so it can develop not just only motivation but also in the students learners especially in physical aspect. And lastly, it is great tool for learner vocabulary for people for all age. We all know that communication and vocabulary can leads into social development of a child because as a child communicates with other people, they can learn into um, other aspects. So TPR is extremely effective way for children and students to expand their vocabulary. Both children and teachers show excellent progress at the early stage of learning. This helps this helps the student to be more active in class and also facilitate participates in other activities.